life has happened so fast in those few months. I feel lighter. I can enjoy life in terms of like not having the weight of, oh, am I going to finish this? Oh, that sort of thing.
But the simple part is like if I keep going and I don't stop, I can finish. On this episode of From ABD to PhD Show, we're going to talk with a Done Dissertation Velocity coaching program alum about their experiences navigating their doctoral journey, navigating the dissertation process, and a little bit about how we've helped them get to the finish line. One thing we know that at Done Dissertation, it's important where you all hear from me in terms of how to navigate the process, but I find that there's nothing better than for you all to hear from students who have actually successfully navigated the doctoral journey so you can learn insights from them about how they did it. So on today's episode, it's an honor to introduce you to Dr. Theresa Henry, who is an alumni of the Done Dissertation Velocity coaching program and earned their PhD in economics at the University of Washington. So I'm looking forward to this conversation with Dr. Henry. And Dr. Henry, we want to say thank you so much for coming on this episode today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so cool, like for folks who are watching, like to see, before we started recording, when Dr. Henry came on, it just said Theresa Henry. Is like, let me go back and edit that. Let's put those letters on there and make sure you put some respect on that, man. You earned that degree, so super proud of you, what you've been able to do. And with that, I think it's helpful for folks to just talk about, what got you interested even going into a doctoral program to begin with? Was it something you always envisioned, or did you just decide at one point, like, I think the doctor is where I want to go?
Yeah, it's not something I always envisioned per se. I knew I wanted to do something very like something technical or mathematical, but as well as like interacting with social science. And at the University of Georgia in my undergrad, they had a bachelor master's program. So my intent was just do a bachelor master's in 5 years and, start living in the world. But a professor was like, hey, I think you do well in a PhD. And so, and many of the graduates of that program, it set them up well to do PhDs. So that's how I ended up doing it. And I love learning. I come from, both of my parents are educators. I never saw myself being an educator, at least not for K through 12. But I was like, oh, maybe I can do this for young adults and above, right? And also, I would still get to do research. So that's how I got there.
No, that's cool. And so, were you, in terms of deciding on doc programs, what was that journey
Mhm.
like? Did you go and kind of interview and look at a lot of different programs? I know in economics in particular, it might be certain universities that people usually kind of sway you to, or, what was that part like for you trying to figure out where to go initially?
Yeah. So for economics, we don't do, well, I don't think anyone does interviews. Like maybe at the top schools,
Sure.
potentially, but that's not information that I have. How did I decide? I talked to sort of professors in my department. Like I said, the program I was in, it said bachelor's, master's, but really it was sort of a funnel into PhD. And so I talked to some of those students. I found a program for minority students where you got to go do research at a university for a summer, and I got placed at Stanford. Um, and so I got to spend time at Stanford and do research. But part of that program, we also were like studying for the GRE, working on personal statements and researching like schools to go to. And they actually provided a lot of the funding to apply to certain schools. So I definitely applied to more schools than I would have originally.
Yeah.
And then economics is different. I think like we don't have to know what we're doing when we come in.
Okay.
And even if you do, even if you like, oh, I want to work with this professor, if you're putting in your application, professors don't really engage with you in that way until your third year.
Oh, wow.
And so there's no guarantee that that will even happen. So I didn't have to necessarily spend a lot of time thinking about the fit in that way, although I wish I did. I wish like
Mm.
like, okay, this is an area I want to study in, and I know this university is very good in that area. Um,
How do you think that would have helped you if you had like that? Because some of them might be contemplating that, even if they're in the doc
mhm.
program now, but figuring out the fit part. So, how do you think that would have helped you if you would have known more about what you want to do?
Yeah. Yeah. How would that have helped me? I think I would have. So the one of the challenges I ran into was once I decided what area I wanted to study, like there just wasn't. The University of Washington has maybe one or two people in different areas. Some like there's one area where they have a lot of people because we have Amazon and Microsoft nearby, and so a lot of them do work. A lot of professors come so they can do work both at the university and there.
Sure.
But if it doesn't work out for you to work with the person you want to, or even if you work with the person, it was really hard to find the full committee, and not necessarily because of personalities or them not interested in your topic, but more of like the personnel wasn't there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I might try to find somewhere where it's like if you don't know going in who you're working with, like make sure there's enough people in your area so you have options. Like you're not forced to work with people that well, not forced to work with people, but for me, I had one person who was somewhat an expert on my committee, but it just would have been helpful for my training and my work to have more people be able to have like more substantive feedback for me.
Yeah, that makes sense too because I think it's I think sometimes when students go into doc programs, especially if they're looking to work with one person in particular, I just always say faculty leave. And like
To
you got to really consider that. I think as part of the goal is like, all right, just imagine if this person leaves that I was so gung ho on working with, they leave. What am I left with, and do I have options still? And I feel like if you have a program where you still have options, then it's a good fit. But if not, you really got to consider you're riding a lot on one person and you not having control over them whether they decide to stay or leave an institution. That's a little scary to have that weight.
yeah, for sure. And that's somewhat what happened to me. Like the person I ended up choosing as my chair ended up leaving. And it just didn't work out for us to continue working together. So yeah, I had to switch fields. In the end, it all worked out, and I got to study something that I was actually more interested in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but I think it's
yeah.
important for folks watching you considering this as you're in your program. Just know people leave, and we tell folks always like, even when you have a chair in place, like, look, what's the backup plan? Because again, things happen, folks move. Sometimes people don't even necessarily leave the institution. They may move into a different type of position that they can't even support students like they once could as faculty. So I just think that's, is really important. And so, as you decided on Washington, what was it about the institution or the program they said this is the best fit for you at that time?
Um, Honestly, it's the only place I got in.
That's a fact. I had the same
So
experience. Shout out to Morgan State. That was what happened to me when I was applying to schools. I get it for sure.
yeah, it was the only place I got in. So but I intentionally applied to universities. I'm from Atlanta, and I wanted to leave the South to go to school. So I
Yeah.
intentionally applied like nowhere south of DC, and then mostly on the West Coast. So yeah,
Okay.
I did.
It- yeah. So, and this is interesting because I think a lot of times institutions miss out on great folks like yourselves by like having either rigid criteria or just not seeing the potential in students, despite probably what you already had successful fellowships, things coming into your program. I just think a lot of institutions miss out on that. I know it was my experience, and now it's funny for me. All the places I didn't get into, I've been offered at least one job since I've been faculty at one point, every place. And so,
Amazing.
yeah, and so it just, and history runs long, but I think it's important that institutions recognize that sometimes you might miss out on great candidates by whatever the
Right. Right. Because I mean, I took the GRE back in what 2010, 2011, so it was still on an 800 scale. And so for economics, the only places, well, I can't say for certain, but sort of with my advisor, communicated to me, the only places where they looked at my application were places where he had connections. And so a
Mm,
lot of times in the top programs for economics, the cutoff was 800 for math. That's a perfect score, or like highest percentile. Whereas
yeah,
I got like 780, but I wasn't looked because they have so many people applying. They were just like,
yeah.
no. So,
So that and
um,
that network became important then.
for sure, for
Um,
sure,
uh,
yeah.
that's an important aspect of this process. And so, you get to university. What was it like in terms of a lot of students when they first get into doc programs are struggling with like the academic writing component or just like meeting that level of what PhD programs are requiring. Did you have that experience, or did you find that when you first started, you were able to easily transition?
It was a difficult transition for me. Our first our first 2 years are coursework and pretty rigorous coursework. Um, so much that we actually earn a master's through that coursework. And what made it, even though I had taken graduate level courses at the University of Georgia, what made it difficult for me was sort of the makeup of the program. Our program is mostly international students, and those international students have to do a full fledged master's degree before they get um, sort of as a signal. Whereas, like,
Sure.
I
Okay.
didn't formally need a master's degree, and I wasn't at a formal master's program. I was
Yeah.
just taking um, higher courses. And so I struggled from like jumping from that, like even from the University of Washington, it was just like a higher level of sort of rigor. And so that's what I struggled with the most. And I didn't really like have much help from my peers because they're like, oh, we've already kind of, we're used to this rigor and you're slowing us down. And there's already like the cultural and language barriers sometimes. But I found my folks that got me through. And I actually failed both of my core or qualifying exams my first year, like after your full first year. And so I
Yeah.
had to retake them, but ultimately passed and was able to stay in the program. But I just, I was like, no, I'm enjoying this. It's hard, but it took me a little bit more time than other people, but
Sure.
it's what I decided I wanted to do.
Yeah, and what allowed you when you had the experiences with the setbacks with your qualifying and those comp exams that first year? Because some students would be like, "All right, this is not for me. I'm done." But the
Mhm.
fact that you're done, you finish your program shows a level of persistence that you're willing to keep pushing through. So, what was it that kept you motivated to actually come back and redo and just push through what some people might see as like, "I'm done with this opportunity."
Yeah, I understood that um, I needed to shed some old ways of learning, some ways of learning that had been, I was very successful with, but like at this level, it wasn't going to cut it. Like me being familiar with material by like rereading it, no, you have to like really engage with it, practice problems. Um, and it's not necessarily about reading everything. And that's what I was doing. And I was, just reviewing in that way. And so when I got to the exam and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not recalling much.
Yeah, it's a different.
But
Yeah,
yeah, and so I was just like, okay, this is not indicative like of what I'm capable of. It's just like I didn't have the right study skills. And so I was like, because of that, and because it was, I don't know, I set my mind to a goal, and so I was just like, um, I'm gonna keep going because I enjoyed it, and I know a lot. I know I'm not. I don't like to say this, but I know I'm not supposed to be here. Like,
I know what you mean. Yeah, exactly.
or I know that's what people think of me. Like there are very few women, very few. Um, well, I was the only Black American, so and very few African students, so or students from African countries. So that kind of pushed me as well. And then my family, because my family like, girl, you got this. Like, if you want to do it, you can do it. You just so all of those things combined is what pushed me through.
No, that's cool because I think a lot of folks will just decide like to fit to be like whatever with this. But I would tell people like
Mhm.
getting a doctorate is hard yet simple. Where it's simple, where if you just keep moving and moving forward, that eventually you will finish. But it's
Mhm.
hard in terms of the work you got to learn. All that stuff is hard. But the simple part is like if I keep going and I don't stop, I can finish for sure.
For sure, for sure. And like by the end of the journey, once I got to the writing stage, or even like formulating the research problem and the writing stage, and I started making those decisions at the end, I'm like, I could have made these decisions months ago, but it took that pressure,
Yeah.
um, and that perfectionism got in the way a little. So,
No, I got you. And so,
yeah.
I'm curious to see, you're in your program, you overcome the qualifying exam aspect the first year, you get through coursework. Now you start to thinking about your dissertation. So can you give the folks a little bit about like what your dissertation focused on, and then we'll talk a bit about that journey when you get to the writing part.
Yeah. So, um, I started a dissertation twice, kind of, because like I said, my first chair left. But I'll just talk about what ultimately became my dissertation. So I did a fellowship, a non-academic fellowship. It was a travel fellowship, where I traveled to non-Western countries, and I was traveling through different countries in Africa and South Asia for 9 months. And so when I came back, and my chair and I didn't have the best relationship, and then the fact that he left without telling me, I was like, okay, what do I want to do now? Because I can't continue on the topic that I was going to continue on. And so I met with a development economist in our department, and she was like, use your experiences. Like you've had the opportunity to be in these countries, and so use those experiences to come up with a solution or a research question. And so I wanted to do something about women's entrepreneurship, especially when their husbands were migrating, because I stayed with families whose husbands migrated away for work, like, still domestically. But and those women, like, they were doing all sorts of things, right? Like, whereas in some other households where it was the male and the female, like, or husband and wife together, like, I didn't see as much agency, and that's cultural, right? But I still wanted to study that. So as I was like looking into that, I met someone at the Gates Foundation, and I started working with them. And he was like, "Oh, what about the financial aspect of it?" And it was sort of led by his interest. Like he had an interest in understanding the financial aspect of it, and so that's how I started studying financial account ownership in low and middle income countries. Um, and I wanted to. By this time, I had decided I wasn't going to be a professor, or I wasn't going to be in academia. And so I'm like, what can I also do to market myself to industry? So it's like, okay, um, I'm going to use machine learning to predict who's financially included and who's not. Because I had the data that was capable. I couldn't ask a causal question from that data either. And so ultimately, my dissertation was predicting who's financially included. And I think we got some pretty interesting results. I hope,
Yeah.
I can keep cleaning it up to publish it. Um, but yeah, so also I didn't get to study like the migrating husbands and
Yeah. That could
women's
be part two. That's
empowerment.
the next part of this. Yeah.
Right, right. Because account ownership, like women who have accounts and are able to have more agency over their money because they have an account, that has implications for their well-being and the family's well-being.
No, that's cool. And so, like, as you're developing this, you kind of start getting through the writing of the dissertation. What led you to the velocity programs? I'm trying to remember what the backstory, like how you got to us. Like, what was it? Did you feel like you needed help at that point in time? Like, what was happening that led you to like actually going to possibly explore getting some outside help?
Yeah, my advisor was as hands off could be.
Sure.
And that was the only person who was like kind of slightly connected to my topic or in terms of expertise. And I was like, I need help or I'm not gonna finish. Like I was honest with her about like what I needed. And
Yeah.
then like she was someone who wouldn't um it was always up to me to communicate with her. Let me say that.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. She didn't really check in. And I wish I would have just known that from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Like and I didn't. But so I was just looking for all sorts of resources. I went to the American Economics Association has like a minority group, and they have mentors. So I was like looking for a mentor. From there, I went and I found cohort sisters or sisters. So that's how I got connected with Velocity, because you did a webinar for
Yeah.
cohort sisters. And I was like, okay, this is what I need and what I need now, because at that point it was, I think, November of 2023, and I had to finish like that year. My department was like, you can't have any longer. So um yeah, that's how I found yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, yeah, I do remember that from the webinar. Yeah, shout out to Cohort Sisters, one of our partners that's supporting Black women doctoral students getting things done. So I'm glad that we were able to connect through that to that platform. And so, you saw what we were, in terms of our presentation for Cohort Sisters, what we were talking about. But for some students, they may say, "Oh, I like what I hear," but then it gets time to like thinking about, "Oh, I got to invest and all that stuff," and they're like, "Oh, I don't know." What like helped you make that decision, because it is an investment. We don't take that lightly from folks that are investing not only their monetary investment but time, because like we want people to put the time in to get this thing done, and energy.
Mhm.
So like what was that process like for you to say, all right, I think I'm finally going to do this?
Yeah. Well, um I think what was most important is like I've been trying to do this by myself for 2 years and I need help. And so the structure that Done Dissertation offered, and like you all offer a lot of resources, from proposal to defending proposal, lots of resources. But I had, I was already writing.
Yeah, you're past that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But sort of like going to office hours and engaging with Dr. Goings and Dr. Varela, as well as the other students, like that was, and it was like a welcoming environment. I mean, obviously that was after I made the decision, but
Yeah, for sure.
I was like, okay, Dr. Goings and Dr. Varela have a background in education. So, to me, that's helpful because there are a lot of professors who aren't trained in how to work with students.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was like, I've been doing this by myself for 2 years. I need sort of that structure of office hours. It would be amazing to have the structure of getting feedback on my work. And also, there was one more thing. Oh, the working sessions. I forgot what they're
No,
called.
writing sessions. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
writing
yeah,
sessions.
yeah.
So all of those things, and then I was still like, I'm like, where am I gonna get the money to make this investment?
Yeah.
But then y'all offer a number of different resources like for that. But that was still scary to me. So I talked to
Yeah, for sure.
you connected me with a couple of people who had successfully completed their dissertations. I watched a bunch of videos on
Yeah.
YouTube, like, because I was like, let me see.
Yeah, because
But
there's some
yeah,
scammers out there. So I hear you. Like, do your due diligence. I'm with that. I'm here for it.
yeah. And then ultimately it came down to like, okay, this is an investment, but what do I lose if I don't finish?
Mm.
And like I said, I've been trying. I mean, I say 2 years, it was probably more than that, but like there were 2 years where I was like very focused in trying to finish myself, and it just wasn't coming together. So like, what do I lose um, if I don't finish? And it was worth the investment. I mean,
Yeah. Now we'll talk
like,
about what you're going to do, what you've done after this, doctor. So I'm pretty sure you recouped your investment at this.
yeah,
What
yeah.
you're doing now. I'm pretty sure. So that's cool. And so you joined the program. I think you joined. I'm trying to remember when you joined. Like, was it before the end of the year? Maybe
December.
December of 23. Okay, and then you
Hmm.
graduated in May of 24. Yeah. So what was that process like once you came in? I know you initially came in, you started working, and then we had like, you were making progress and some things happened, got a little delayed, and then you picked it back up. So like, what was going
Mhm.
on? Like, what was happening for you? Because I know a lot of students may experience that where they're like moving, things are moving, then there's a little bit of stop, then things move back. And so how are you, processing what was going on at that point in time?
Whew. Um, how was I processing what was going on? I like in September, October, I had a very uncomfortable meeting with my department.
Hmm.
Um, a very uncomfortable meeting, and I don't know, didn't sort of think the things I had gone through were being like they were stating them, but it was like it was like okay, these things happen.
So what are you gonna do? Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
So, and then at that point, I just decided like I've done all this work. I want to finish this. And so in September, I had just decided like I'm doing everything I can to finish. Um, and
hmm,
then that involved, seeking resources to help me finish. But then in what was it like February? Um, I have a chronic illness that has flare ups, and I guess from the stress and the lack of sleep, it
hmm,
was yeah, it was doing its thing.
yeah. Getting to
And
that finish
flare,
line for sure.
yeah, yeah. And so I was like, okay, let me communicate. And I got an extension, but in terms of like persisting, I was like, yes, I'm feeling this way, but this is out of my control. That doesn't mean like it's a sign that I'm not supposed to do what I'm trying to do. Like, let me rest. Let me take care of myself because you have one body. um, or I have this body right now, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, and I can't continue this way. So let me communicate. Let me rest. And I had to bring in like other resources like ombudsman and
Yeah,
disability resource center and things of that nature, but um I just knew like this is what I want to do, and these are not the reasons why y'all are not going to allow me to do it, especially when it's something out of my control. It's not that I'm lazy,
yeah, for sure.
it's not that I'm unfocused, undisciplined. Like I can't control this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, and then we get back, you start moving this thing along. Let's talk and talk with folks about like if I had to say how you finished your dissertation, having watched it in like real time, you kind of wrote the last, I don't know, uh, third of it. I would say probably within like a week or two span. Like it was a very quick time turnaround for you. So like, what was that like? Of like, how did you like decide? All right, I got to dive in. Literally, it was like 2 weeks. Like I gotta
yeah.
knock the rest of this stuff out. And we're talking about two
So
papers, two additional papers that need to be written for your dissertation that you knocked out. Probably like, yeah, about 2 weeks. So what did that look like? What were you doing? Because I'm curious because I saw parts of it, but I know you were working around the kind of around the clock to get that done. So what was that part like for you?
that goes back to the perfectionism. And y'all watch the videos on YouTube with Dr. Goins about perfectionism because like in hindsight it's like he was right. So I just did way more work.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a lot of work done, but no writing.
Mm,
And so I actually had way more material than I needed. And it just came down to, I think I kept working, yes, perfectionism, but because like I wasn't able to make decisions.
mm,
Um, and so once the last couple of weeks came, I'm like, okay, I have to start making decisions. Like I have the work, I've shown I'm capable, but a part of this is writing it up. Um, and that was I don't know, that was scary for me, but um, that's how I just had way more material than I anticipated. So I guess I would tell folks if you don't have the guidance from your advisor to make some of those decisions, because my advisor is very like, I don't know if this is completely accurate, but I call them my Montessori esque. Like
Do what you want to do.
Yeah, it's like,
Feel free.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I don't want to constrain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which can be good like early on probably, but I needed a little bit more help. And um so yeah, I would like write as you go. It's scary, and or there are like all these pulls you have that like, okay, let me just do this one more thing. But go ahead and like as you're doing stuff, keep writing. At least from like, I work with a lot of data, and so I could stay in data forever, and that's what I did ultimately.
Hmm.
Because that's my comfort. That was my comfort zone.
Hmm.
But I should have been doing some data. Okay, write up what happened, even if it didn't go in or not. But probably something would have come together much faster if I just didn't keep analyzing and analyzing.
Yeah. That's so funny that you say that because I did a workshop, a dissertation retreat at my university, and so someone that attended was like kind of the same boat. They were saying, I got this data, and all they kept doing was like each. I was like, no, we got to write. They're like, no, I want to create more tables. I'm like, no, 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 we're done with the tables. And I would ask them, well, what's the answer to your research questions? Talk it out to me, and they would tell me exactly what the answer to the questions were. I was like, write that up. Like, no more
Hmm.
tables. You got enough. Let's just write this thing up. And so I guess that's maybe a data. If you like data, maybe that's what happens as you are going through the process. It's funny that you said that. I had the same experience about 3 weeks ago with this student. Same type of approach. Like
Yeah.
they love being in the data.
Yeah, it's like a I enjoy doing those things, but it's also like a coping mechanism.
Mm,
Like you feel comfortable there, so you're gonna stay where you feel comfortable. Um, and to be fair, you told me a number of times, no more R.
yeah, I was like, get
No
out.
more R.
It's all good. We're good.
And then I would always have to go do like one or two things, and I would get that sort of dopamine of like, oh, I can do this, I can do this. So having like probably having some additional guardrails for myself would have been
Gotcha.
helpful.
And so as you get towards the end of the process, you get to writing up, but now you're approaching your defense. And so we'll talk a bit about that preparation because I know a lot of students are like, oh my God, like how do I get ready for a defense and that whole
Mhm.
like. So you talk about that defense journey, what defense was like for you.
Yeah, what I wish I, kn- what I would tell people, um, and this sort of came to me during my defense. You know the most about what you're writing about. Yes, your professors and advisors might be experts in the area, but like your question, you know the most about it. And so um, having that confidence going in, or I would take that confidence going in to the defense. But I, um, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. So
No,
you
no,
said
no.
what was?
Yeah, we're talking about just the defense process, like any insights of what you're sharing about just the idea that you go confident about your study. And I
Mhm.
always tell people this, like, and I think even when we went through your like defense prep, I was like, look, you know this data. And so any question that someone asks you on a defense, so this is for people out there, like if you want a strategy on defense, any question they ask you, kind of answer it, but bring it right back to your data because now that's a field that you play in that no one else can play in better than you. So like once we bring it back, now I can have my own conversation with my own data to you as a committee, but you can't really come at me about what is in my data because I know it better than you all.
Right, right. And if it's something that you can't tie back, I got in contact with one of my undergraduate mentors
Yeah.
before, and she was saying like, uh, don't don't make it bigger than it is. So
Yeah.
you're thinking of it as a defense, but you've given talks
Yeah.
where people have had to ask you questions, and what happened there? Usually, it's more of a conversation, or you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about it in that way. um Either give a suggestion on how you might think about it later, or like ask them like, oh, I would love to talk to you more about that
Yeah.
after. Like there was like
Yeah.
different ways.
Side step of that question. Like, I'm out of here. I'm not.
Right, right. Because honestly, like you can't think about everything,
Yeah.
right? You don't hopefully your advisor has guided you to think about the very important questions so you're prepared for those. But um, yeah, it's a conversation with people you've hopefully interacted with a bit.
Yeah.
Yes, what's on the other side of it is huge. It's like a culmination of your degree, but just you know the most. It's a conversation with other
Yeah.
people who are becoming your peers now. Um, yeah, you got it.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I feel like for you, just one funny story about your defense in particular. So typically for our clients on their defenses, I try if I can, my schedule allow, I'll go to the defense. And so I go to Dr. Henry's defense and it's on Zoom. Everything's going good. But and there's a number of us on there. There's probably like 10 or 15 people on at the time. Dr. Henry's there. You're in a room. I guess everybody's in person for you. Your committee's there, or some people might be there as well. So we see you on Zoom, but y'all, we hear nothing that's happening at this defense, and this is going on for an hour. You have you had a 90-minute defense. I think it was about 90
Yes.
minutes. This is the longest we've had a client. We have 10 minutes has been the shortest. You have been the longest at 90. So it's been in
Okay.
everything in between. So we're on there, and we're like, "What is going on?" We can't hear anything. I think we can. I think we could see the slide. I can't remember now if we could see the slides or not, but we see you talking and we could tell like you're letting them have it in terms of like responding to questions and stuff, but we just don't see what's going on during the presentation. This is so funny. I'm sure your family was like, what happened? You know,
Yeah, yeah. But everybody stayed. I
yeah,
was like,
you're already like, when is thing on? What they doing? Oh, they finished? All right. Well, what's the deliberation happening? We're on here. We're all on mute. Nobody knows what's going on. We hear nothing, but we're here to
yeah.
support for sure.
Yeah, I appreciated that because even just like having out there is helpful. So yeah, invite your friends and family. Obviously, we in the room couldn't hear them, so like yeah, sort of give them sort of the 401 of like this is how these things go because
Yeah.
some family members
Well,
aren't
they're
excited.
concerned, like, "Oh, this is
Oh
taking a
yeah.
while." No, don't worry, don't worry. Like they ask me,
Hmm.
like, "Don't worry, this part's good." Yeah, I do remember that
Yeah.
part. We were able to talk with each other. But yeah, we're in the chat, like, "What's going on? We can't hear," but we're like, we don't want to distract you from do what you need to do. So we're just like, "All right, we're just gonna wait this one out and see what happens."
Right. Right.
Uh,
So
yeah,
yeah.
that's the first time it's happened. I haven't had that one happen. We were like, "Well, we're gonna be here," so but that shows though your support system and that when we get towards the end, it's like, "Look, all hands on deck. We're trying to get this thing done." And
Hmm.
but it was great to see you go through that and be done with this process. And so, you go through that experience, you finish your dissertation. Now, part of our time and when you were in our program was thinking about what's the next step for you and like what does life look like? You're
Hmm.
gonna get this degree. What does life look like? And so, how have you been able so far to like take that degree and leverage it? Like, what are you doing now with the degree that you finished with?
Yeah. So like I initially said, I have my sights set on industry,
Yeah,
and I didn't have time to look for a job while I was finishing. So I finished without a job, but I have a mentor who goes to the same dog park. Well, who's now a mentor, goes to the same dog park as I do. Um, and she doesn't live in Seattle, but she has a home here, and so she's an economist. And I just
wow,
had
that's
been
so
talking,
random. Like this,
right?
at the dog park that you find. So, okay, go ahead. That's cool.
Yeah. And so I've always talked to her, and she was here that summer, and I was like, oh, I finally finished. And she was like, oh, great, what's next? And I was like, I'm not sure. Like, I know I want to go to industry. I haven't started looking. I'm not sure. And she knew a little bit about my background. And so she was like, I have some work that you could help me with. And so we made that into a postdoc. And so I got that postdoc position, which I'm sort of still in,
Yeah.
but I was also applying for industry jobs. And again, I had a friend who called me who was like, hey, my friend's hiring, like, and I think you'd be perfect. And so I was able to get an interview at Microsoft and went through the screening process, went through 3, 4 interviews, and was offered the job as a data and applied scientist, where I'll be estimating demand for the cloud. So, so yeah, it ultimately came down to again like connections because I think there's so many people capable of doing things, but I think people want to you know who they're working with sometimes, and sort of have the ability to like verify what's on paper. Like I've, interacted with this person, or I
Yeah.
interacted with someone who knows this person.
Yeah.
And so I start at Microsoft in a couple weeks.
That's so great. So
So,
it's like, being able to finish, I'm just so thankful that you were, stuck this thing through and able to navigate everything that you've been going through to finish. And so with that, I would love for you to, if you have any advice for doctoral students who are kind of currently stuck and what they should be considering doing to get out of the process and finish this thing up, if you have any words of encouragement for doc students.
mm, I would say the most important thing for me was remembering my goal. Or even like sometimes I don't even like the word goal, but that's what it is. But like even if you think of it as your vision, like you have a vision of what you want to do after, you have a vision of why you want to complete this. And so that needs to be front and center. And then find the resources to help you get to reach your vision, because um, this is tough. This is a very tough, like Dr. Gwen said, it's like hard but simple. And so if you have the resources where someone's like, okay, these are the steps to complete my dissertation, you just got to do them. And I think like having that plan, like having that vision, having a way to execute it, will ultimately help you reach your goal. And once you're out, like, I mean, I've only been out a few months, but life has happened so fast in those few months. So, and I feel lighter. I can enjoy life in terms of like not having the weight of, oh, am I going to finish this? Oh, that sort of thing. And then, getting to do the work that you're already capable of doing, but you just need those letters, honestly.
That's a fact. Uh,
Yeah.
And so, what would you say? Because the last thing too is like someone who's contemplating, like, oh, I might want to join Done Dissertation or get some help from us, but they're still trying to figure out, is this the investment I need to make? Like, what would you say to someone like that if they're trying to, I guess, make that decision for themselves?
Yeah. Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say, like, I was further along than most folks in the
Yeah, at the time when you were in
program.
the program, yeah, I think a lot of people were
Right.
working on their proposals where you were kind of wrapping things up. I think it was a couple of y'all finishing up, but I think you, Dr.
Right.
A couple of y'all around that time were finishing things up, but mostly
R-
at the proposal phase for sure.
right. And so, like, I wouldn't, I wouldn't let like where you are be the biggest factor. Like, because it was so valuable for me, even though like I had already done so much work. I just needed that plan and that structure and those steps to get over the finish line. And if you're earlier on, again, like from beginning all the way through, Done Dissertation has those plans, and then you get to interact with the coaches as well as the other students. Like I forgot to say, I had meetings with a couple of students who helped me on my work. So yeah,
That's so cool. Yeah.
I would, yeah, I don't know, it was invaluable for me. And
And to see you kind of navigate that and just see the network of what folks are able to do. Like you all are different. This is what I like, because now when we get folks that reach out to us, they're like, "Oh, I'm doing something in economics." I was like, "Oh, go talk to Dr. Henry, because that's someone you can talk about." Or we have someone in medicine.
mhm,
Oh, go talk to this person, or go to talk to that person. And so for me, having having so many students come through here now, it's great to just see how we're able to connect students, because you all are doing great things. And I think you alluded to this, even with how you got in some of these positions. Like you need a network sometimes to know when these opportunities are coming. So I think that's part of our goal as well for you all, is like make sure that there's a
mhm.
network of people that you can connect with. So it's
Right, right. And um, that's another good point in terms of the area you're in. I thought like most of the students or candidates also seem to be in like education or maybe like social work. And I was like, is this going to be beneficial for me? And it was. Like, even though my dissertation was slightly differently structured, um, my field was different, it didn't matter at all. Like, because there's no, like, I think if you're getting too much into the technical stuff sometimes, you don't sort of, um, you miss the big picture. Because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, you're going to have to be able to communicate your research to people who aren't experts in the technical stuff. Yes, that stuff is important, but like, stay with the big picture. And so don't let the field be a reason why you don't seek help from Done Dissertation.
That's great. And with that, where can people find or learn more about the work that you're doing? Keep up with what you got going on.
Oh, I guess I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I
I'll put a
mean,
link in there for folks.
yeah, I probably should update that though.
Yeah, I think on yours, I think you need to put your title on there. I don't think you have it with Dr. Henry, though. We got to do something. We got to update that. I think I did see that. I was like, wait a minute. No. We got to update.
Yeah,
We'll do
I
that.
think I'm still a candidate.
I'm going to change
um,
Dr. Henry. For sure.
yeah, I've been, like I said, I've been doing my work for my postdoc the last month, but I've also been just like enjoying life a little. So so yeah,
That's
I
cool.
got it. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, so folks, make sure you catch up with Dr. Henry on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Dr. Henry. I'll have you backstage for a second. Let me just wrap up the episode.
Okay.
So what I want to say is just thank you all so much for watching this episode from ABD to PhD show. Again, we want to do episodes featuring some of our clients, and so you can hear about their journeys, the things that they've done. Because again, it's one thing to hear from me, but it's also a different thing to hear from people who've been through our programs and then also who have just successfully navigated the process. And so if you're someone that you still are trying to figure out, like you need help, you've been stuck and you're not sure exactly how you want to or how you're going to get to the finish line because your way hasn't worked quite yet, what I would invite you to do is just apply and learn more about our Velocity coaching program. And so if you'd like, you can schedule a complimentary consultation by going to www.velocitydissertation.com, or you can scan the QR code that is here on your screen. But with that said, I want to say thank you so much for watching this episode. And until next time, I wish you all a done dissertation. Take care.